The high-speed train from Madrid to Granada cut through the Andalusian countryside like a silver arrow, carrying Peter and Klaus toward what could be the most significant archaeological discovery of their lifetimes. The journey took less than 3 hours, but Peter felt as though he was traveling through centuries of Portuguese maritime history that had been hidden in his family's bloodline. Klaus spent most of the trip studying the photocopied documents from Toledo, cross-referencing them with his own research notes and occasionally muttering in German as pieces of the historical puzzle fell into place. Peter found himself both grateful for the historian's expertise and increasingly wary of the convenient timing of their partnership. The Alhambra complex is massive, Klaus explained as they approached Granada. 13 hectares of palaces, gardens, and fortifications. But according to your family's maps, the hidden chamber is located in the Generalife Gardens, away from the main tourist areas. Peter gazed out the window as Granada's distinctive skyline came into view. The red walls of the Alhambra dominated the hillside, rising above the modern city like a crown of Moorish architectural perfection. The sight took his breath away, even from a distance. The palace complex radiated an otherworldly beauty that seemed to transcend time itself. "How do we get inside after hours?" Peter asked, his Chicago experience with security systems making him automatically assess the challenges they would face. "That's where your family's Portuguese merchant background becomes useful," Klaus replied with a slight smile. According to the documents, the Mateus family had legitimate business relationships with the Nasrid rulers of Granada. They didn't just hide treasures. They were granted special access to conduct trade negotiations in private chambers. As their train pulled into Granada's Santa Justa station, Peter felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and apprehension that had become his constant companion since arriving in Spain. Each new city brought revelations that reshaped his understanding of his own identity, but also brought new dangers from forces he still didn't fully understand. The afternoon sun was intense as they emerged from the air-conditioned train into the dry heat of Andalusia. Granada felt different from Madrid and Toledo, more exotic, more mysterious, with an undercurrent of North African influence that reminded visitors of Spain's complex multicultural heritage. Their first stop was a modest hotel in the Albayacin neighborhood, the historic Moorish quarter that offered stunning views of the Alhambra across the Darro River Valley. From their hotel room's small balcony, Peter could see the red walls and towers of the palace complex, illuminated by the golden late afternoon light that made Granada famous among photographers and artists. "We'll join a regular tourist group tomorrow morning," Klaus suggested, spreading the ancient maps across their small table. "It's the best way to scout the locations without attracting attention." Peter studied the Portuguese documents with new understanding. His ancestors' handwriting was surprisingly clear, even after 5 centuries, and the detailed maps showed not just the public areas of the Alhambra, but hidden passages, private chambers, and what appeared to be a sophisticated security system designed to protect valuable cargo. "My family weren't just merchants," Peter realized aloud. "They were essentially running a high-level smuggling operation." "Cultural preservation," Klaus corrected gently. "During periods of religious and political persecution, families like yours were often the only way important manuscripts, artworks, and scientific documents could survive. You should be proud of that legacy." That evening, they walked through the narrow streets of the Albayacin, observing the Alhambra from different angles and noting the various entrance points. The palace was closed to visitors after sunset, but security appeared to rely more on the natural barriers of walls and elevation than on modern surveillance systems. At a small tapas bar near the Mirador de San Nicolas, they overheard a conversation in English that made both men freeze. 2 men in expensive suits were discussing the Portuguese cash and the American who's been asking questions in Toledo. Peter and Klaus exchanged glances but continued eating their jamon and olives as if they hadn't heard anything. When the 2 men left the bar, Klaus followed at a discreet distance while Peter paid the bill and took a different route back to their hotel. "Corporate types," Klaus reported when they reconnected. "1 American, 1 British, staying at the Parador Hotel inside the Alhambra grounds. They have official access." The news was both concerning and informative. Other parties were clearly tracking Peter's movements, but their presence also confirmed that whatever was hidden in the Alhambra was valuable enough to attract serious attention. The next morning dawned clear and hot, perfect weather for tourists exploring one of Spain's most famous monuments. Peter and Klaus joined a guided tour group, blending in with couples from Germany, families from Japan, and backpackers from various countries, all drawn to experience the legendary beauty of the Alhambra. Their guide, a passionate young woman named Carmen, led them through the Court of the Lions, the Hall of the Ambassadors, and the intricate chambers of the Nasrid palaces. Peter found himself genuinely moved by the architectural perfection he witnessed, the interplay of light and shadow, the mathematical precision of the geometric decorations, the way water and stone had been combined to create spaces that felt both earthly and divine. But his real attention was focused on memorizing security camera locations, guard patrol patterns, and the layout of areas not included in the public tour. Klaus, meanwhile, was photographing architectural details that corresponded to landmarks mentioned in the Portuguese documents. When the tour reached the General Life Gardens, Peter felt his pulse quicken. According to his family's maps, the hidden chamber was located somewhere beneath the terrace gardens that cascaded down the hillside in a symphony of fountains, cypress trees, and flower beds. The water system here is incredibly sophisticated, Carmen explained as they walked along the canal that ran through the center of the Patio de la Acequia. The Moorish engineers created a network of underground channels that still supplies water to the entire complex. Peter and Klaus exchanged meaningful glances. Underground water channels would provide perfect cover for hidden chambers and secret access points. During the lunch break, while other tourists gathered in the shade near the Palace of Charles V, Peter and Klaus slipped away to explore a section of the gardens that was roped off for maintenance. Following the Portuguese map, they located what appeared to be an old maintenance access point disguised as decorative stonework. "Tonight," Klaus whispered as they rejoined the tour group, 2 a.m., when the security patrol is at its lightest. What do you think Peter and Klaus will find in the hidden chambers beneath the Alhambra? And who are these mysterious corporate types following their every move? Share your theories in the comments. The afternoon passed slowly as they completed the official tour and returned to their hotel to prepare for the night's adventure. Peter checked and rechecked his equipment, flashlights, tools for opening old locks, and a camera for documenting whatever they might find. Klaus seemed unusually nervous, constantly checking his phone and looking out the window toward the Alhambra. "Are you having second thoughts?" Peter asked as they prepared to leave the hotel at 1:30 a.m. "Not second thoughts," Klaus replied carefully, "but I keep thinking about what we might unleash. Some secrets are kept hidden for good reasons." Peter studied his companion's face in the dim light of their hotel room. "Klaus, is there something you're not telling me about this operation?" Klaus was quiet for a long moment before answering. "My grandfather's notes mentioned that the Portuguese cache isn't just historical documents and artifacts. According to his research, it also contains information that could be politically sensitive even today." "What kind of information?" "Trade routes that are still in use. Financial networks that have operated continuously since the 15th century. Names of families and organizations that prefer to remain anonymous." Peter felt a chill of recognition. His own work in corporate espionage had taught him that some information was valuable precisely because it revealed connections that powerful people wanted to keep hidden. "Are you saying we might be walking into something dangerous?" "I'm saying we should be very careful about who we trust with what we find," Klaus replied grimly. The Alhambra at night was a different world entirely. Without the crowds of tourists and the bright Spanish sunshine, the palace complex felt ancient and mysterious, full of shadows and whispered secrets. Security lighting illuminated the main pathways, but large sections remained cloaked in darkness. Peter and Klaus approached through the General Life Gardens, using the terraced landscaping as cover while they made their way to the maintenance access point they had identified earlier. The sound of flowing water from the complex fountain system helped mask their footsteps as they worked. The decorative stonework proved to be exactly what the Portuguese maps had indicated, a cleverly disguised entrance to the underground water management system. Klaus's lockpicking skills, developed through years of archival research, made quick work of the ancient but well-maintained mechanism. "Your ancestors were remarkably thorough," Klaus whispered as they descended a narrow stone staircase that led beneath the gardens. This access route is still in perfect condition after 5 centuries. The underground passages were dry and surprisingly well ventilated, suggesting that they had been designed for more than just water management. Emergency lighting, clearly installed much more recently, illuminated their path as they followed the Portuguese map deeper into the hillside. After nearly 10 minutes of careful navigation through increasingly narrow passages, they reached a heavy wooden door marked with the same symbols they had seen on the documents from Toledo. Peter's ancestral key fitted perfectly into the lock, which turned with surprising smoothness. The chamber beyond took both men's breath away. It was larger than either had expected, a roughly circular room carved directly into the bedrock beneath the Alhambra, with stone shelves lining the walls and a vaulted ceiling that disappeared into shadows above their flashlight beams. But it was the contents of those shelves that left them speechless. Hundreds of manuscripts, charts, and documents were carefully preserved in oiled leather wrappings. Wooden chests lined one wall, their surfaces covered in Portuguese and Spanish maritime symbols. Display cases, clearly installed more recently, contained navigational instruments, astrolabes, and what appeared to be samples of precious metals and gemstones. "This isn't just a hidden archive," Klaus breathed. "This is a complete record of Portuguese maritime exploration, preserved in perfect condition." Peter approached one of the display cases and found himself staring at a collection of maps unlike anything he had ever seen. These weren't the simplified charts found in history textbooks, but detailed navigational records showing precise locations of islands, harbors, and trade routes across the Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific Oceans. Some of these routes, Peter realized, are still classified by modern governments. Klaus was examining a shelf of bound manuscripts. Scientific treatises, astronomical calculations, medicinal knowledge from Africa and Asia. This is Renaissance knowledge that was thought to be lost forever. But the most intriguing discovery was a section of the chamber dedicated to what appeared to be financial records. Ledgers, contracts, and correspondence dating back centuries, all meticulously preserved and organized. Trade agreements, Klaus explained as he examined the documents. But not just for goods. This looks like a record of information exchange, cultural preservation efforts, and... Oh my God! What? Klaus held up a leather-bound ledger, his hands shaking slightly. This is a record of families and organizations that have been secretly funding cultural preservation efforts for centuries. Peter, some of these names, they're still prominent today. Politicians, business leaders, royal families. Peter felt a familiar chill. This was exactly the kind of sensitive information that had gotten him into trouble in Chicago. We're not just looking at historical artifacts. We're looking at evidence of ongoing secret networks. Networks that have been operating continuously since the age of exploration, Klaus confirmed. And according to these records, your family has been one of the key coordinators. They had been in the chamber for nearly an hour, photographing documents and taking detailed notes, when they heard sounds from the passage outside. Footsteps, multiple people, moving with purpose rather than stealth. Peter and Klaus exchanged alarmed glances and quickly gathered their most important findings. There was no other exit from the chamber. They would have to face whoever was approaching. The footsteps stopped outside the door. A voice called out in accented English, "Mr. Matthews, we know you're in there. We're not here to harm you, but we do need to have a conversation." Peter recognized the voice as belonging to one of the men they had overheard at the tapas bar. He looked at Klaus, who nodded grimly and began switching off their flashlights. "We're archaeological researchers," Peter called back. "We have permission to be here." "I'm sure you do," the voice replied with amusement. "Your family's permissions for this site go back quite a long time, but the situation has become complicated. Please come out so we can discuss this properly." Klaus moved close to Peter's ear. "There's something I haven't told you," he whispered urgently. "My grandfather's notes mentioned that there are multiple groups interested in these archives. Not all of them are friendly. Are you saying these could be the bad guys?" "I'm saying I don't know who the bad guys are anymore." Peter made a decision. "We're coming out. he called. But slowly, and with our hands visible, they emerged from the chamber to find 3 people waiting in the passage. The 2 men from the tapas bar, and a woman Peter had never seen before. All were dressed in professional attire that seemed oddly formal for a middle-of-the-night archaeological expedition. "Mr. Matthews," the American man said politely, "my name is David Chun, and I represent certain interests that have been, shall we say, cooperating with your family's preservation efforts for quite some time." "What kind of interests?" Peter asked warily. "The kind that prefer to remain anonymous," Chun replied. "But I can assure you that we want the same thing you do, to ensure that your family's legacy is preserved and protected." The British man stepped forward. "The problem, Mr. Matthews, is that other parties have become aware of your activities. Parties with considerably less noble intentions." Klaus moved slightly behind Peter. "What kind of other parties?" "Collectors who believe that historical artifacts belong in private hands," the woman answered. "Governments that would prefer certain trade route information remain classified indefinitely. Organizations that see your family's financial records as a threat to their current operations." Chin nodded seriously. "The point is, Mr. Matthews, that your journey of discovery has attracted attention from people who would rather eliminate both you and these archives than risk exposure." Peter felt the weight of centuries of family responsibility settling on his shoulders. "So what are you suggesting?" "We're suggesting that you allow us to help you," Chin replied, "to provide security and resources while you continue your investigation. In exchange, we ask only that you keep us informed of your discoveries and allow us to help determine how and when sensitive information should be revealed." Klaus stepped forward. "And if we refuse?" The 3 strangers exchanged glances. "Then we wish you the best of luck," the British man said. "But we cannot guarantee your safety." Peter and Klaus spent several long minutes in tense negotiation with the mysterious representatives. It became clear that these people had extensive knowledge of the Portuguese archives and the Matthews family history, but their true motivations remained opaque. "We need time to consider your offer," Peter finally said, "and we need to continue our research independently before making any commitments." Chun nodded understanding. "Of course, but please understand that time may be limited. Other interested parties are likely to make contact soon, and they may not be as diplomatic as we are." After the 3 strangers departed, Peter and Klaus returned to the chamber to collect the most critical documents and artifacts they had discovered. They worked quickly but carefully, knowing that this might be their only opportunity to study these materials without external interference. "We can't trust them," Klaus said as they prepared to leave. "But we also can't ignore their warnings about other groups." "Agreed," Peter replied, "which means we need to stay mobile and continue following the leads we found." Among the Portuguese documents, they had discovered references to Barcelona specifically, to connections between the maritime trade networks and Catalan merchant families in the 15th and 16th centuries. The references suggested that important documents and possibly artifacts had been moved from Granada to Barcelona during periods of political instability. "Barcelona makes sense as our next destination," Klaus observed. "It was one of the major Mediterranean ports during the Age of Exploration, and it had strong connections to Portuguese trade networks." They left the Alhambra as quietly as they had entered, but both men felt the weight of being watched as they made their way back through the sleeping city to their hotel. By dawn, they had checked out and were on a high-speed train heading northeast toward Catalonia. As the Andalusian countryside gave way to the landscapes of central Spain, Peter reflected on how dramatically his life had changed since his arrival in Madrid. He had come to Spain seeking escape from his Chicago past, but instead had found himself drawn into a mystery that connected him to centuries of family history and potentially dangerous contemporary politics. "Klaus," Peter said as they approached the Catalan border, "when we get to Barcelona, I want complete honesty between us. No more surprises, no more mysterious connections that you forgot to mention. If we're going to continue this partnership, I need to know I can trust you completely." Klaus met Peter's gaze steadily. "You can trust me, Peter, but you should also know that Barcelona may present challenges that neither of us is fully prepared for. The Catalan archives I've researched suggest that your family's activities there were more politically complex than their work in other cities. More complex how? Barcelona was where the Portuguese networks intersected with Catalan independence movements, French trade interests, and Spanish royal politics. Your ancestors weren't just preserving documents. They were playing a very dangerous game of international intrigue. As their train pulled into Barcelona's sand station, Peter felt both excitement and apprehension about what they would discover in the Catalan capital. The city's famous architecture and vibrant culture awaited them, but so did mysteries that could prove even more challenging than the secrets they had uncovered beneath the Alhambra. Thank you for staying with us through this incredible adventure beneath the Alhambra. The hidden archives revealed treasures beyond imagination, but they also brought dangerous new players into Peter's journey. Klaus has proven to be both valuable ally and source of concern. His knowledge is invaluable, but his connections to other interested parties raise questions about his true loyalties. And now mysterious corporate representatives are offering both help and veiled threats, making Peter's situation more complex than ever. The Portuguese documents point to Barcelona as the next crucial piece of the puzzle, but Klaus warns that the political complexities there may be even more challenging than what they've faced so far. What do you think awaits Peter in Barcelona? Can he continue to trust Klaus? Or should he be more suspicious of his companion's hidden connections? And who were those mysterious representatives, allies or enemies in disguise? Don't miss the next episode, The Hidden Balcony of Barcelona, where Peter will discover that his family's legacy involves not just treasure and documents, but also a story of forbidden love that has left clues hidden in one of Barcelona's most romantic locations. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment of Peter's incredible journey through Spain's hidden history. The greatest discoveries and the greatest dangers are still ahead.